just bared down on that guitar the way he felt. And you could feel it come right off the record.
When Buddy Holly died in that plane crash, his wife María Elena made a shocking choice. She refused to go to his funeral. For decades, people thought she was too heartbroken. But that wasn't the whole truth. In 2024, María Elena finally spoke about what really happened that day. Her confession revealed a secret so painful, it changed everything we thought we knew. The real reason she stayed away wasn't just grief. It was something much darker. Something that haunted her for 65 years. Buddy Holly was born on September 7, 1936, in Lubbock, Texas. His real name was Charles Hardin Holly. He arrived during one of the hardest times in American history, the Great Depression. His family was poor. They lived in a small house with no insulation. Sometimes they had no running water and had to rely on a well. His father, Larry, took any work he could find. His mother, Ella, stretched every penny to keep the family fed and clothed. Life was hard, but their faith kept them going. The struggles of those early years lit a fire in Buddy. He dreamed of something bigger. Music was the one bright spot in the Holly home. The family often played together in the evenings. Buddy's mother played piano. His brothers played guitar and banjo. Buddy tried to join in any way he could. His father joked that someone needed to sit and listen. So he did. These family jam sessions made the hard times easier to bear. They filled the house with joy, even when money was tight. For Buddy, those nights planted the seeds of what was to come. At just 5 years old, Buddy wanted to be on stage like his older brothers. At a local talent show, they handed him a violin, but they had secretly greased the bow so it wouldn't make a sound. Little Buddy played along, smiling wide, and the crowd loved it. He even won a prize. That moment showed his determination. He wanted to be seen. He wanted to be part of the music, no matter what. As Buddy grew older, he started to change. The boy who went to church and followed the rules began to rebel. By high school, he was sneaking out at night. He and his friends hung out in cafes and roadhouses. He tried drinking. He tried smoking. They swore. They even stole small things like candy and records. By day, he looked like a polite young man. By night, he was a wild one. The double life had begun. One of the most shocking stories from Buddy's youth was about his first time with a girl. His friends set it up. It happened in a hidden spot, and they all watched and coached him. It wasn't romantic. It was about proving himself. That night marked a break from the values his family had taught him. It showed how badly he wanted to shake off the good boy label. Then came the moment that changed everything. In 1955, Buddy saw Elvis Presley perform in Lubbock. Twice. The first show amazed him. The second changed his life. He even got to meet Elvis backstage. Elvis liked Buddy's spirit and invited him to open at his next show. Sharing the stage with Elvis showed Buddy the power of rock and roll. He realized that this was what he wanted. That night, the path of his life shifted forever. Buddy later said, "We owe it all to Elvis." Before meeting Elvis, Buddy played country and western. After seeing Elvis, he wanted to mix things up. He started blending country with rhythm and blues. He wanted his music to have that same wild energy. The crowds at rock shows didn't just listen. They danced and screamed. Buddy saw that rock and roll wasn't just music. It was a movement. When Buddy signed his first record deal with Decca in 1956, fate gave him a new name. A secretary left the E off Holly by mistake. Instead of fixing it, Buddy kept it. Buddy Holly sounded right. It was simple and easy to remember. That small error became a name known around the world. Even before fame, Buddy was already turning heads. At 16 in 1952, he appeared on local TV in Lubbock. He played on a talent show and showed confidence beyond his years. He blended country, gospel, and early rock. The audience saw his natural charm. That TV moment helped shape the star he would become. In 1953, Buddy formed a duo with his friend Bob Montgomery. They called themselves Buddy and Bob. They played anywhere they could: school dances, clubs, radio, roller rinks. By 1954, they were one of the most popular acts in West Texas. Their mix of country, bluegrass, and R&B was fresh and exciting. Nashville scouts started paying attention. Those years with Bob taught Buddy about teamwork and how to win over a crowd. In October 1955, everything changed for Buddy Holly. He was just 19 and playing as the opening act for Bill Haley and his Comets in Lubbock, Texas. The crowd was there for the band that made Rock Around the Clock a #1 hit. But in that crowd was someone who would change Buddy's life. Eddie Crandall, a talent scout and manager for Marty Robbins, saw Buddy's raw energy on stage. He couldn't look away. The very next night, Crandall watched Buddy again. This time, Buddy was sharing the stage with Elvis Presley at KDAV. Crandall didn't waste time. He told Jim Denny, the Grand Ole Opry manager, to help Buddy. Denny sent Buddy's demo tape to Decca Records. By February 1956, Buddy had a record deal, from a local stage in October 1955 to a big contract in just 4 months. It was a meteoric rise for the teenager from Lubbock. But what should have been a dream come true turned into a nightmare. The Decca contract misspelled his name as Holly instead of Holly. It seemed small, but it marked the start of Buddy losing control. His producer, Owen Bradley, didn't understand rock and roll. Bradley wanted Buddy to stop playing guitar. He filled the studio with Nashville session musicians. He forced Buddy to sing soft country pop songs that didn't feel right. Buddy felt trapped. He had grown up loving the raw sound of Elvis. Now he was stuck recording music that felt fake to him. The tension in the studio grew. Buddy hated the sound. He hated losing control of his music. This wasn't just about songs, it was about who Buddy was. And it hurt him deeply. The sessions in Nashville were a mess. Decca billed him as Buddy Holly and the Three Tunes. But nothing clicked. The label forced him to use musicians who didn't share his style. Bradley's production smothered the wild energy that Buddy brought to the stage. The first single, Blue Days, Black Nights, with Love Me on the flip side, came out in April 1956. It sold only 19,000 copies. That was a flop for that time. The next single, Modern Don Juan, did even worse. Things got so bad they had to borrow a bass from the Grand Ole Opry just to finish one session. And then came the real insult. In July 1956, Buddy recorded That'll Be the Day. Bradley thought it was terrible. He refused to release it. By the end of the year, Buddy was broke. The dream seemed over. In January 1957, the final blow hit. Decca dropped Buddy. They called him a no-talent. Paul Cohen, the head of A&R, even said Buddy was the worst artist he'd ever worked with. And it got worse. The contract Buddy's parents had signed for him blocked him from recording any of his Decca songs for 5 years. At just 20 years old, Buddy Holly was broke, humiliated, and nearly finished in music. But Buddy wouldn't give up. He went back home to Lubbock. He started over. When Buddy Holly and his band traveled to Clovis, New Mexico, they stepped into a place that felt like magic. Norman Petty's studio was no ordinary stop for young musicians. It was filled with equipment so advanced that even the studios in New York and Los Angeles couldn't match it. Petty had spent his money on the best Macintosh tube gear, All-Tech microphones, and huge Leslie speakers. This is what gave the recordings their warm, clear sound, later called the Clovis sound. People are still amazed at how good those recordings sound. Even after all these years, what made the studio even more special was Petty's belief in letting artists do things their own way. Back then, most record men wanted to control everything. But Petty gave musicians freedom. Because of that, Buddy Holly was able to create his own style. Today, you can still visit the studio. You can sit in the same room where Holly and the Crickets listened to their playbacks, with the same instruments and gear that helped create rock and roll history. The hit song, That'll Be the Day, has a surprising beginning. Buddy Holly and drummer Jerry Allison watched the Searchers together in 1956. In that film, John Wayne's character kept saying, "That'll be the day." The line stayed in their minds. Later, as they talked about writing a hit, Allison repeated it as a joke. That simple moment sparked something in Holly. He started working on a tune right away. The first version of the song was recorded in 1956. Decca Records rejected it. They didn't understand the new sound Holly was creating. A year later, in 1957, Holly tried again. This time, he recorded it in Clovis with Petty. The new version became a huge success, climbing to #1. A line from a Western movie had turned into a rock and roll anthem that changed music history. There was another clever move that helped make it all possible. After Buddy's deal with Decca ended in January 1957, a rule said he couldn't re-record any songs he had made with them for 5 years. But Holly and the band believed their new take on That'll Be the Day could be a hit. So, they picked a new band name, the Crickets. With that name, they signed with Brunswick Records. Brunswick was part of Decca, but the trick worked. Decca didn't realize they were distributing the very music they had once rejected. The name itself came from a list of insects, inspired by other bands like the Spiders. They liked the idea of their music chirping out to the world. This smart plan helped them break free and changed how artists fought for control over their work. Norman Petty also came up with a label strategy that was unusual at the time. Buddy's records came out under 2 names. His solo work was released on Coral, while the Crickets' songs came out on Brunswick. Both labels were part of Decca. This meant more records could be released in less time. Fans would see new music from Buddy Holly or the Crickets sometimes just weeks apart. This helped build excitement and mystery. It also allowed different songs to reach different groups of listeners. Between August 1957 and August 1958, 7 of their songs hit the top 40. Their names became linked with the birth of rock and roll. Petty's plan helped Buddy Holly reach more people and stay ahead of the competition. September 1957 was the moment when everything changed. On September 22nd, That'll Be the Day hit #1 on the US Billboard charts. At the same time, it topped the UK singles chart. That meant Buddy Holly and the Crickets were now stars on both sides of the ocean. The song also reached #2 on the R&B charts, which was rare for a white rock and roll group in those days. Their music crossed racial lines and brought people together. By the end of the year, Cashbox magazine named them Most Promising Vocal Group. Their records were played at places like the Apollo Theater in New York and the Royal in Baltimore. Audiences of all kinds were drawn to the sound. The music world would never be the same. Something even bigger happened in August 1957. On August 16th, Buddy Holly and the Crickets became the first white group to play at the famous Apollo Theater in Harlem. The theater had always been a home for black artists. Promoters had booked the Crickets by mistake, thinking they were a black R&B band because of their sound. When Holly and his band stepped on stage, the crowd was shocked. People booed at first, but by the end of their 6-night run, they had won everyone over. The cheers were loud, and the walls of the Apollo shook with applause. This showed that music could break barriers and bring people together. In just 1 year, from August 1957 to August 1958, Buddy Holly and the Crickets placed 7 songs in the top 40. That'll Be the Day, Peggy Sue, Oh Boy, Maybe Baby, Rave On, Listen to Me. These songs became part of rock history. This was at a time when it was much harder for songs to climb the charts. And Buddy did it all before he turned 23. His success in such a short time is proof of his talent and hard work. His songs inspired musicians who followed and are still loved today. Buddy Holly's appearances on The Ed Sullivan Show helped make him even more famous. On December 1st, 1957, he performed That'll Be the Day and Peggy Sue. Millions watched. His clean look and horn-rimmed glasses made him easy for teens to relate to. His second appearance came in January 1958. These two performances helped push his records higher on the charts. They also left a deep mark on young British musicians. The Beatles said they were inspired by seeing Holly on TV. When they played on Ed Sullivan 6 years later, they were following in his footsteps. In just 2 shows, Buddy Holly helped start a wave of music that changed the world. Meanwhile, Norman Petty was supposed to be Buddy Holly's mentor. But behind the scenes, he was something very different. He told the band to carry Bibles and read them. He preached about staying moral on the road, but at the same time, he kept the band's royalty checks. He put their money in accounts under his own name. When Buddy married María Elena Santiago, things became clearer. Her aunt, who worked in the music industry, discovered that Petty had been holding their royalties for months. Petty wasn't just controlling their money. He was trying to control their minds too. His actions destroyed trust in the band and poisoned their friendships. It didn't stop there. Petty also stole Buddy's publishing rights. He ran a company called Norvajak Music. On May 28, 1958, Buddy signed over the rights for I Know I'll Have the Blues Again. It was common for all his songs from 1956 to 1958. Petty put his name on songs he didn't even help write. This meant Petty earned more from Buddy's songs than Buddy himself. The records sold millions. Buddy saw almost none of that money. Petty got rich from Buddy's work, while Buddy struggled. By late 1958, Buddy was in serious trouble. Petty's tricks left him broke. Petty kept all the royalty money in his own bank accounts. When Buddy moved to New York, he found out how bad it was. Petty was holding his money, and the legal mess made it impossible to get paid. Then a promoter, Manny Greenfield, sued Buddy. The court froze Buddy's royalties. With no money and bills piling up, Buddy had no choice. He went on the brutal Winter Dance Party tour in early 1959 just to survive. Even after Buddy's death, his family spent decades fighting for the money Petty took. Petty didn't just take Buddy's money. He broke up the band too. He managed to turn Jerry Allison and Joe Malden against Buddy. When Buddy left for New York, they stayed loyal to Petty. The Crickets were finished. Buddy lost his band, his friends, and the team that helped make him a star. Petty kept control of the Crickets' careers. Buddy was left on his own. By early 1959, Buddy was desperate. He was ready to take Petty to court. But he had no money for lawyers because Petty still wouldn't release his funds. So Buddy had to join the Winter Dance Party tour. The conditions were terrible. The buses were cold. The schedule was exhausting. And then came the crash on February 3, 1959. Buddy's legal battle ended with his death. But his family kept fighting for years. In the end, one of rock's greatest talents died broke. Not because of failure, but because of betrayal. But Buddy's life wasn't just about loss. On June 19, 1958, he walked into Peer Music in New York. There he met María Elena Santiago. She was 25. He was 21. Buddy fell for her at once. He asked her out that same day. She said he had to ask her aunt's permission. He did. They spent 5 hours talking. By the end of the night, Buddy gave her a rose and proposed. María Elena said yes. On August 15, 1958, they married. The whole industry was shocked at how fast it happened. Their love story became legend. Not everyone was happy about it. Petty thought the marriage would ruin Buddy's image. He told María Elena to pretend she was just the Crickets' secretary. Even Buddy's father was surprised. People in Lubbock didn't accept Maria Elena easily. She was Puerto Rican and Catholic. That made her an outsider. But Buddy didn't care. He stood by her. He defied everyone for love. After the wedding, Buddy made a bold move. He cut ties with Petty and the Crickets. He and Maria Elena moved to Greenwich Village. It was a new start. Buddy began writing and recording on his own. He tried new sounds. He chased creative freedom. In that short time, he wrote some of his most personal songs. Buddy Holly didn't set out on that final tour for glory. He did it because he had no other choice. After breaking ties with his manager, Norman Petty, Holly realized he couldn't access most of his money. Petty had kept control of the royalties, and Holly was left broke. Things got worse because Holly's wife, María Elena, was pregnant. They had just moved to New York City, and bills were piling up fast. Holly was desperate to provide for his family. So he agreed to the Winter Dance Party Tour, a brutal 24 shows in 24 days across the frozen Midwest. It was the only way he could see to make quick cash. He left Maria Elena behind, a choice that would haunt her forever. The tour promised money, but came with relentless travel and bitter cold. The winter of 1959 was one of the worst in Midwest history. Temperatures dropped to -17 degrees on the tour's first day in Milwaukee. The snow was 13 inches deep, and it didn't get above zero until nightfall. In some places, the cold hit -36 degrees. Most of the musicians had never faced weather like this. Drummer Carl Bunch ended up in the hospital with frostbite after the bus broke down in the middle of the night. The group kept getting sick. Night after night, they performed while exhausted and frozen, with no chance to rest. Their buses were a disaster. Instead of real tour buses, they got old school buses that broke down again and again. The heaters didn't work most of the time. The musicians were so cold, they burned newspapers inside the bus to keep warm. They went through at least 5 different buses, each as bad as the last. Carl Bunch's frostbite was so bad he couldn't continue, and the rest had to fill in for him. Every trip became dangerous, pushing them to the limit. The tour's schedule made no sense at all. The route zigzagged wildly across the Midwest. After playing St. Paul on January 28th, they had to drive more than 300 miles to Davenport the next night. Then it was back north to Duluth, then to Green Bay. Some drives were over 400 miles. There were no days off. The musicians even had to load and unload their own gear. The cold, the distance, and the broken buses turned the tour into pure misery. One historian called it the tour from hell. It felt like the booking agents had planned the stops by throwing darts at a map. Holly had put together a new band for the tour. Waylon Jennings was on bass. Tommy Allsup played guitar. Carl Bunch was on drums. They'd barely rehearsed before hitting the road. Still, they gave their all every night, even as the tour wore them down. When Bunch was hospitalized, the others had to take turns on the drums. The crash that ended the tour would link these names forever. For Jennings, it would mark the start of a long and famous career, but it came at a terrible price. On February 2, 1959, the band played their last show at the Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. Afterward, fed up with the cold and the broken buses, Holly decided to charter a plane. He hoped to get to Moorhead, Minnesota, ahead of the bus so he could rest and do laundry. The small Beechcraft Bonanza had room for just 3 passengers plus the pilot. The Big Bopper was sick and asked Waylon Jennings for his seat. Jennings agreed, a choice he would regret for the rest of his life. Tommy Allsup and Richie Valens flipped a coin for the last seat. Valens called heads and won. "That's the first time I've ever won anything in my life," he said. Not knowing it would be his last, the pilot, Roger Peterson, was only 21. He had 711 flight hours, with 128 of those in a Bonanza. He wasn't certified to fly using instruments alone, and he'd failed his instrument check ride 9 months earlier. The Bonanza's attitude indicator worked the opposite way from what Peterson was used to. On that dark, snowy night, Peterson likely thought he was climbing when he was really diving fast. The plane went down at 3,000 feet per minute. He never realized he was in trouble until it was too late. The plane took off at 12:55 a.m. on February 3, 1959. It vanished from radar within minutes. It crashed in a frozen cornfield about 5 miles northwest of Clear Lake. The plane hit the ground nose down at 170 meters, with the right wingtip carving into the earth. The wreckage tumbled 540 feet before stopping at a fence. All 4 men died on impact. The crash site wasn't found until 9:00 a.m. Snow had covered the debris, and the field was silent except for the wind. The autopsies showed just how violent the crash had been. Buddy Holly's skull was split down the middle of his forehead. Half his brain tissue was missing. His chest was crushed, his arms and legs broken, his face and even his scrotum cut. His body had to be identified by fingerprints. The Big Bopper's body was thrown far from the wreck, sparking rumors he survived the crash, but his injuries proved otherwise. The loss was sudden, brutal, and heartbreaking. The music world would never be the same. María Elena Holly's world fell apart on February 3, 1959. She had been married to Buddy Holly for only 6 months. She was 2 weeks pregnant with their first child. That morning started like any other, but the news that came changed everything. She didn't hear it from a family member or the authorities. Instead, it came through a breaking news report on television. The shock was more than her body could bear. Within 24 hours, she lost her baby. In one cruel moment, she lost both her husband and her unborn child. Later, she spoke of her heartbreak. She said she blamed herself. She had not been feeling well when Buddy left. She had begged him to stay. She believed that if she had gone with him, he would never have boarded that plane. The pain in her words showed the heavy guilt she carried. Her tragedy made people see how public grief can crush private lives. It led to real change in how such news is shared. The way the news reached the families added to the horror. Buddy's mother found out the same way. She heard it on the radio in Lubbock, Texas. She screamed and collapsed. People were outraged that such personal loss was broadcast to the world before the families even knew. The media faced harsh criticism. Something had to change. And it did. News agencies across the country created a new rule. They would never name the dead until their families had been told. That rule, born from this tragedy, is still followed today. It showed that even in reporting, kindness and care must come first. It became a standard that shaped how both newspapers and television handled heartbreaking news. María Elena was too broken in body and spirit to attend Buddy's funeral. It took place on February 7, 1959, at the Tabernacle Baptist Church in Lubbock. She stayed in New York on doctor's orders. The stress and sorrow had left her too weak to travel. She never got to say goodbye at his grave. She never went to see where he rests. Her guilt stayed with her. She often said that if she had been by his side, the crash might never have happened. Family, friends, and fans gathered to mourn him. But the empty space where his young wife should have stood showed just how deep the pain ran. Her absence said as much as words ever could. 2 months after the crash, a farmer found something that would spark decades of rumors. It was a .22 caliber pistol. The gun belonged to Buddy Holly. Its discovery set off wild theories. Some believed the pilot, Roger Peterson, had been shot. Others imagined a struggle on board that brought the plane down. The whispers would not stop. In 2007, the body of J.P., the Big Bopper Richardson, was exhumed. Dr. Bill Bass, a top anthropologist, led the examination. There were no signs of bullets, no evidence of foul play. Richardson had died from the force of the crash. Still, the gun remained a dark symbol, a reminder that some questions from that terrible night may never be answered.